Hello, I'm back. Late, but I'm here. Hi there, I'm Cherry. Welcome to my channel. This is my corner of hopefully not too much chaos today because I have been doing this for more times than I am willing to admit. But please forgive me. This is the first time I'm doing a yearly wrap up. I have no clue what I'm doing. So I have decided, after many a trial and error, to just give you some stats. Let's get to it. In 2025, I read a total of 108 books. That is less than in 23, but 24, because in 2024, I read, I think, 120 books. But I felt like that was not really accurate. I felt like there should have been a few books that I should have like not counted somehow. But that's just a personal thing. I had a bit of a rough year. um, there was a lot of loss and a lot of grief, and that really shows in my statistics for 25. Because even though the things that were hurting last year happened in 2024, it's just that grief and losing loved ones isn't really something that disappears once the new year strikes, right? So this year I wanted to do it a little bit differently because I was very much aware of my struggles and of the limits to my capacity when it comes to absorbing books. So the 108 total books read, I don't feel comfortable with that. I am going to adjust that number. When I first started looking at the stats, I am looking at the story graph, by the way. I love the story graph. They give you excellent statistics and information on what you've been reading. And I love statistics. I love numbers, and I think it's fascinating to see what you can learn from them. And one of the most fascinating stats that you can find on the story graph is moods. If you look at either extreme, right? If you look at both ends of the graph for moods that I read, the most read mood of 2025 was emotional, and the least read mood was hopeful. And that's it. That's me in a nutshell. At least for 2025, I was very emotional. Still I'm always emotional, but like last year it was really bad. If I'm completely frank, I'm still not very hopeful. Yeah. So, and I have to laugh because otherwise I'll cry some more. I do that more than enough already. So I do think it's interesting because it also felt right in the year before that. When we look at 2024, if I look at my moods in 2024, I lost two loved ones, and there were two other losses that I really struggling with. So in 24, my extremes were most read dark and least read was inspiring. I feel like that correlates to how I felt throughout the year. And this is despite the fact that they have a book club, the cherrypies book club, and I read viewer submissions through that. I have no control over what kind of books are submitted. So, I having read 24 book clubs over the 108 and still seeing numbers like these, I think that's so curious. So, of the 108 books that I supposedly read in 2025, 90 of those were fiction, 18 were nonfiction, 24 were book club books. Of those were I read 72 physical books. A few of those were also library books, 23 ebooks, and 13 audiobooks. And this is the one that I'm mm, really not comfortable with. But we'll get to that in a little bit. I've also learned that I really don't read a lot of fast paced books. Most of them are medium, which I feel like is for a lot of people. But I was expecting the slow books to be third place and not fast. But 62% is medium, 24% is slow paced, and 14% is fast paced. my most read genre was fantasy, which is another very that's so fascinating. Not very surprising is my least read genre, which is politics. I'm not a fan of politics, but let's not get into that today. Um, the fantasy thing, the reason that is interesting for me is because I tend to gravitate towards literary fiction if I'm left to my own devices. But as I have gone through layers of grief that I had not experienced before, not in my adult life at least, no one prepares you for grief. And what I'm trying to say, I'm so sorry, I'm ranting. What I'm trying to say is that this has translated into what I read. I have gravitated towards more fantasy books in the last year and a half because I needed more comfort and I needed to escape. I needed to escape a little bit more. My head has been very loud and chaotic, and audiobooks were just not working for me. I love audiobooks. I think they're genius. And for anyone who thinks they don't count or something, that's not what I'm talking about. Let's not forget that for the vast majority of human history, we told stories vocally, not only because for a huge chunk of history there was no written script, but also people couldn't read. So we depended on the oral storytelling, right? So that's not my point. My point is that it was so loud in my brain that I just didn't. It wouldn't come through. I would be listening to an audiobook and going about my day, doing my chores, and I would just lose an hour of audiobook, not a clue what happened or what I'm even listening to because I was just so deep in my own head that nothing could penetrate. And I tried a few times, but there's a few books in there, like, let me pull them up, hold on, I didn't write them down. There's a few books that I just, they're so important, like The Book of Fire by Christy Lefteri, A House Without Windows by Nadia Hashimi, and then I also listened to Emily Wilde, and I just didn't, it wouldn't stick. So looking at that number, right, 108, I don't feel like that's fair. Yes, I consumed these books. I listened to them fully, and even though I remember a little bit of from some of these, it's not enough. Now, I'm not saying that you should remember every detail and all the names of all the side characters and the side quests. No, that's not what I'm saying. But when, especially with the two titles that I mentioned, those are important stories. And I want to be able to get the lessons from them. I don't need to remember every single name of every person, but reading to me is learning. I want to learn something from it, whether it's from the writing itself or of the story, of the people, of the country, and something. But if a book just doesn't stick at all, I don't feel like I want to count them. I need to try again. And with the audiobooks, especially, I think this is a matter of the wrong form of book. I truly believe that sometimes your head just isn't ready, like it was like in my case, my mind just wasn't ready for audiobooks. I needed to grieve a little bit more. And sometimes it's just that listening to a book doesn't give you the satisfaction that that story would bring you if you had been able to hold it in your hands and to be able to read something over a few times. I especially have this with literary fiction, and it showed last year. I want to underline, I want to annotate, I want to be able to leave back really quickly. That makes it harder for me to choose an audiobook to begin with. I'm very careful with that, or I used to be, because I stopped listening to audiobooks. And the books that I've decided to not count towards the 108, which are The Book of Fire by Christy Lefteri, A House Without Windows by Nadia Hashimi, Medea by Rosie Hewlett, I'm sorry, the Emily Wilde series. Only those five, because I listened to, well, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yes, 5. Which would mean that if we're honest, if I am honest to myself, that my total books would be 103. I consumed and am satisfied with what I retained with 103 books. And that's okay. I'm going to pick up the audiobooks that I wasn't able to process, and I am planning on reading them as a physical book or ebook. But audio isn't working for me at the moment, and also for these books in particular. I'm really sure that has something to do with it as well. Have you ever had that that you try to listen to a book, but it just wouldn't stick, and then you picked up a physical copy of the same book, and you were like, "Oh, this makes a lot more sense." No, is that just a me thing? I think it can't be just a me thing, right? I tried so hard to actually make a top 10. This is in no particular order, all right? Of the over 100 books that I read, these were the ones that I loved the most. In no particular order, okay? This is not a top 10. These are just a few books that I really enjoyed and looking forward to continuing digging into the authors or series or whatever it may be. These are just a few that I really loved. A few standouts within the standouts are Goddess, which is about La Mappe, who was a real person, a real woman, quite the legend. And she was an opera singer, she was a sword fighter, she was very likely gay. She fell in love with a girl, love at first sight. Things happened. I'm so afraid. I'm so afraid I will ruin it. It's a semi biography written as a story, but with facts from real life. I have found that this is one of my favorite ways to learn about people, not just a biography, but like a storyline biography, not necessarily romanticized, but as a story. And Goddess is sublime. Iron Widow was so different from anything I've read. It's about in the world of Iron Widow, they use these robots. There's a name for them. I can't think of them right now. I'm so sorry. And they have to put girls in there for their energy, but all the girls and the boys control them. Except then this girl comes along, and she doesn't. It was completely different from what I read so far last year, and I am looking forward to the second Heavenly Tyrant. I think the second book is called Heavenly Tyrant. Hoping that it will 3 books actually. And the last one I want to give a little shout out is Braiding Sweetgrass. It's written by someone who is actually a botanist. So she knows what she's talking about, and she has combined her scientific knowledge with indigenous knowledge. And I think we can learn so much about about ourselves and about the world from this book. It's so valuable. I listened to it, and this was one of the books that I did actually process. In fact, I have now a physical copy because I need to read it again. I'm going to read it again. The most beautiful lesson that I got from Braiding Sweetgrass was about three sisters, which is a better way to grow crops. I'm gonna try to keep it short, but you plant corn, beans, and a pumpkin in the same space. So the corn grows first, and then the beans can use the corn to grow, and the pumpkin makes sure that there is less weeds because it covers the soil. And I think that's just genius. Why don't we do this? Why are we? I mean, I know why, but why? I think hold on. Now because I don't want to talk about this, but I'm going to really, really shortly. There are 3 books that were well, 2 books were actual flops, and 1 book was just frustrating. And I'm going to start with the least. Well, they're all I don't know in no particular order. Again, Eleanor Oliphant is completely fine by Gail Honeyman. I hated that book. I am autistic myself, and it was infuriating. It was offensive. It was infantilizing. And in general, it was very hurtful to know that this is a bestseller. It was a bit re traumatizing because things that happened to this adult woman were actually things that I had to deal with as a teen. But this author decided to give these struggles to an adult character, and I know that there's autistic people who deal with the same things later in life, but to me, it felt like Eleanor Oliphant did the same for female autism because there's a distinction. In case you didn't know, male and female autism is not quite the same, but I feel like that book did the same for female autism as Rain Man did for autism in general. Maybe that's a oh sorry, maybe that's an unpopular opinion, but I hated it. Another book that was a shocker, really, and in a bad way, was The Maidens by Alex Michaelides. I read the Silent Patient in 20, well, the year before, 2024. And I loved it. I wasn't really practiced in psychological thrillers anymore. It'd been quite a few years. So I after reading oh, you can't go down. Is that it? After reading The Maidens, I'm no longer sure about my opinion about The Silent Patient, because that book is bad, in my opinion. I'm gonna tell you why. I'm gonna tell you how it ends. Okay, so if you don't want to know how The Maidens ends, go to this timestamp right here, and I will see you there. The clue, the murderer of the story in The Maidens, is the niece of the main protagonist, who was raised by the main protagonist, I forget her name, and her husband. The niece lost her parents when she was just a small child, so her aunt and her husband took her in and raised her. Now, from a very early age, the husband, this is all off page, by the way, um, her, and they were in love, apparently, even though she was very much a minor, underaged. And before the story starts, the husband has died, and the niece is in college at this point. That's where the story takes place, and these girls get murdered. Turns out that the niece is murdering the girls to lure her aunt to the college so she can set her up for the murders, because the niece, and the husband were going to run away together. But because he died, she went mad and she started murdering on her own. But this is not a subject that is talked about. The niece is being blamed for these murders while she was groomed by a full grown man from a very early age. And while it's touched upon just very slightly, the niece gets the blame. And sure, like, there's an argument to be made that yes, she did the murder, she did the thing, but also, why aren't we talking about the fact that this girl was groomed off page? Why is this normalized? Also a bestseller, I think, isn't it? The normalization of that behavior in that book is worrying, and I don't blame the people who suggested and recommended this book to me, because it's just ingrained still in our society that these things are apparently normal. I don't know because she was of legal age when the bad things happened. But let's just forget that the reason she's doing the bad things is because she was as a teenager. I need to stop talking about it. It's not good. All right, it's not good. I was very pissed off. I'm still pissed off, clearly, and I will not be donating that book. Yeah, very nasty aftertaste when I finished that book. I was just flabbergasted. And lastly, the honorable mention. This book is a bit infamous. It was a book club book. I'm talking about the ballet, the autobiography by ballet. I read this, well, not from cover to cover, because the last, what, 50 pages are just a list of all the goals that Pele made in his career. Now, the potential of this book was there. There's a lot of, well, there's a good chunk of early life at the beginning of the book, and there's a decent amount of time spent after his career, and there's some issues with his son that get addressed, but everything in between is just a play-by-play of his whole career, and I hated it. I mean, that's a strong word, but like, to the second. Actually, I read a bit of this during stream, and I don't know where I didn't mark it. Otherwise, I would have showed you. But like, to the second, it was infuriating, and it wasn't my thing. It's not a bad book per se, but I want to mention it anyway, so you can be warned. If you're a fan of ballet and you're familiar with his career, you're not interested in anything but like his life, just read the first 2 3 chapters and the last 2 3 chapters. You don't necessarily need anything in between, unless you want to read about all the goals that he made, which honestly, I just think he's very proud, or he was very proud of his life and his career and his accomplishments. And I do understand that. But when I read autobiography, I am expecting things we don't know. this just felt more like an informational book instead of an autobiography, which is fine. I'm glad that the guy got to tell his story because he did achieve quite a lot, and he should be proud of his career. So, what did I learn from last year? I think I need to grieve a little bit more. I tried to work my way through some of the pain. Didn't work out. So I'm not going to do that this year. I am going to read more fantasy. I've got a few series that I want to continue. I'm determined to finish Wheel of Time, even though I'm terrified because I just know my favorite characters are doomed. I just know it. They always are. It's always the ones that I choose that die. So I'm just scared to finish the series, but I will try to feel less guilty about it. Um, I've got a few things coming up that I'm really excited about, and I hope you will enjoy them as well. If you want a more specific video of my favorites of 2025, let me know and I will get on it. But I think I'm going to leave it here for now. Thank you so much for being here. It has been an honor that you decided to spend a little bit of your day with me today. What were some of your favorite books of 2025, or what were some of your worst flops and disappointments? Let me know in the comments. I think this is going to be a good book year. I think 26 is going to be a success when it comes to books. Everything else, I don't know. It's just whimsy. I hope to see you in the next one. Bye.